Dear listeners of the Female Guides Requested podcast, happy Wednesday. This is your host Ting Ting from Las Vegas. Our guest today is Allie Ace. We met in an XPI course. She told me that she had been an active listener of the show and resonated deeply with a few prior guests, especially Mia Tucholke. She mentioned that she had a very positive experience with her AMGA courses and wanted to encourage other aspirant female guides not to be afraid to take the first steps to become a guide. Originally from the East Coast, Allie learned to ski in the Poconos at the age of 3. In 2010, she moved to Tahoe to pursue bigger mountains and a full-time career in the ski industry. She had traveled all over the country and the world to teach skiing and coach ski racing. Allie is an USSS Level 400 Alpine Coach, Coach Developer and Alpine official. She has her PSIA Alpine Level 3, Children's Specialist 2, Freestyle Specialist 1, Resort and Divisional Trainer, and Snowboard Level 1. With her eye on steeper and deeper lines, Allie started backcountry guiding in 2020. She's an AIARE Course Instructor, has a Pro 1, and is an AMGA Apprentice Ski and Alpine Guide. Allie currently lives in Truckee, California, works for Alpenglow Expeditions, NASTC, and is the lead Alpine trainer at Sugar Bowl Resort. She's working towards her AV Pro 2 and the PSIA National Team this season. When not skiing, Allie enjoys whitewater rafting, kayaking, rock climbing, and yoga. Allie is very passionate about continuing education and training. She is serious about being outstanding in her job and equipping her clients and students with current and relevant knowledge. I learned so much from her. We found there are many analogies between the ski and rock disciplines. Without further ado, let's dive in the episode with Allie Ace. Allie, welcome to the Female Guides Requested podcast. I'm very happy to have you. Do you want to introduce yourself to the listeners?
Yeah, sure. My name is Allie Ace. I met Ting Ting a few weeks ago when I took a SPI instructor course with her at Red Rocks through ASI. And yeah, we met there and connected. I especially resonated with her podcast, Female Guide Requested, and a lot of the stories that she explored and told through that, as well with just the whole course and her teaching style and the learning environment that she created. So I reached out to her to learn more about the podcast and what she's doing for female guiding in the industry. So that's kind of my background with her and where that started. But I'm obviously a female guide as well, so can connect on those points. I moved to Truckee, California in 2010 and got into guiding through skiing. I didn't become a guide at first. I was a ski instructor and a race coach, and started doing that as a full-time career. That's why I moved out here from the East Coast. I grew up in Pennsylvania. So a lot smaller mountains and not as strong of an outdoor industry. I didn't even really know that guiding could be a profession when I was a kid growing up, or much about a lot of the sports and activities that I participate in today. But ski coaching and racing took me to amazing places all over the country and the world through my work. And I ended up a few years ago up in Alaska. And that's where I got really into backcountry skiing, unlike Tahoe, where there's 13 resorts within an hour. In Girdwood, Alaska, there's only one major ski resort, but there's endless mountains for backcountry skiing and travel. So I got super into that up there and was really enjoying it while I was coaching. And then, as we all know, the COVID pandemic kind of changed the world. And I moved back to Tahoe, and a lot of the resorts were shut down. But with restrictions and limitations, we were still allowed to do some outdoor guiding because it was in the fresh air, contactless, stuff like that. So I started backcountry ski guiding, and that led me down the path of taking a lot of AIARE certification courses, joining the AMGA, and becoming a ski guide. So initially started the AMGA route because I wanted to be able to access some ski lines, but have started down the rock and alpine tracks as well.
Actually, you said that you grew up in Pennsylvania. I
Yep.
actually learned how to ski there in the Poconos. I'm not a very good skier. I started skiing very late, like 20 something. And so you start with a ski instructor and race coach, and is it mostly in the ski resort?
Yep.
And then you went to Alaska and found out this great range, and then gradually morph into probably like backcountry skiing.
Yeah, I had dabbled with some recreational backcountry skiing once I moved out west to Tahoe. A lot of friends and coworkers did it and got me into it, but I just did it recreationally, maybe like 10 days a year for the first 10 days I was out here. And then when I moved up to Alaska, my schedule and just the accessibility to the mountains really allowed me to explore and get a lot deeper into the mountains up there. And I really fell in love with that way of travel, accessing the mountains, being super remote. Like I said, it was something we could still do during COVID when the resorts were all shut down, and still enjoy the mountains. So when I came back to Tahoe, I wanted to incorporate that into my career in the industry and start being able to take people out guiding as well.
I'm mostly a rock climber. I'm trying to make some analogy. So for me, it's like more like say resort coaching and skiing. Roughly, for me, it's like, oh, okay, maybe you coach and teach climbing in a climbing gym.
Yeah.
Okay, and and then guiding, it will be like you go say in the mountain range, or you take people on the adventure route, and then like longer multi pitch, or maybe in the back country they will do some alpine stuff.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so it's just kind of like similar. Okay, you want to use ski in the back country and take people on say well adventure lines. Obviously, you are descending, and then us climbing, we are ascending. And how long did it take you to think that you want to make the shift? Like start when you start as a say ski resort coaching instructor, and then you start thinking about going out in the wild.
Yeah, like I said, I did it recreationally in Tahoe for, I guess it was 8 years before I moved up to Alaska. And I really enjoyed it because I got to ski lines that I couldn't ski in the resorts. But I would still say what I did in the Tahoe area was pretty tame. Um, as in kind of more like those single pitch routes that you drive up to a high elevation. We're pretty lucky to have a lot of roads that go to mountain passes in California and really easy access to trailheads. A lot of the stuff I started skiing in the winters was stuff that I had hiked in the summertime before, so I was familiar with the peaks. Um, I kind of say you could always like see your car as you ski back down, even if it was like 1,500 feet. Really cool lines, but not very far out into the backcountry. And part of that is just because in California, we have so many of those classic lines that are so accessible from the car. Like you don't have to go very far. And then I'll never forget the first time I went backcountry skiing up in Alaska. We're driving up the pass, and it does go up about 1,000 feet. And we start the approach, and I'm looking at the mountains, and they're like miles away. So, because in Alaska, there's not as many roads as there are in California. So the access, like, it definitely felt like we were going deeper, and it was taking a lot longer to get to the top of the mountain. And we had lost cell phone service like a half hour ago. Um, so I felt like I was like really in the remote wilderness up there and in the backcountry. Like there was no other people around. You were just out there in nature with like these huge mountains surrounding you. And I kind of moved to Alaska with the goal or the dream of going heli skiing. I had seen a bunch of ski movies and really wanted to be able to ski those lines. And my first time backcountry skiing up there, I was like, I don't need a helicopter. This is it. Like, I'm skiing these lines that I wanted to ski, and I didn't even need a helicopter. Like, I could do it myself just by walking up them. So that was pretty cool. And I just started doing it as much as I could. My work schedule is really unique up in Alaska. As most people probably know, the days are shorter up there in the winter. So we have limited daylight. But kind of like when I was a kid growing up, they had lights at the ski resort. So you could ski at nighttime underneath the lights. So the kids that was coaching actually trained in the afternoons after they got out of school. So I basically had my whole day open, and then I would go to work at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. But I could wake up and go for a ski tour in the morning 5 days a week, which was different in California where the resorts were open from like 9 to 4. So I was working during the entire daylight period and had less time to go out in the backcountry. I probably got like 30 or 40 days a season in the backcountry in Alaska. So then when I came back to Tahoe, I wanted to continue to be able to spend that much time in the backcountry and sharing it with other people. So like the intro to guiding, part of it was when all the resorts were shut down and we had all the COVID restrictions, like you could still go recreate outdoors. So it was a good way for people to get outside and be able to do things. And a lot of people got into backcountry skiing for the first time at that time. So there was a lot of need and demand for guides. The industry really picked up in the Tahoe area, especially because we're so close to major metropolitan areas like San Francisco, where a lot of people come up to ski and maybe didn't want to or couldn't go to the resort, but wanted to still be able to ski. So they were interested in learning how to get in the backcountry. And it can be kind of intimidating. There's definitely like a barrier to entry, buying all the gear, knowing how to use it, knowing where to go, how to plan your trip and stay safe to avoid avalanches. So there was a lot of work, and I was able to get work for a couple companies. And then kind of the second part of starting guiding started up in Alaska as well, with just the kind of explosion of social media influence on the industry. So a lot of the people that I went backcountry skiing with were my colleagues, other coaches that I worked with, and we would like post on Instagram or Facebook or share pictures of our adventures out in the backcountry, and it influenced the kids that we were coaching. So I worked with mostly high school age kids that were really good skiers by the time that they get to that level. It's pretty cool to be working with kids that can stand on the top of a mountain and look down it and like not be scared to ski any line. And they were definitely interested in what we as the group of coaches were doing out in the backcountry and interested in getting out there as well. And I just felt that it was like a responsibility that if I'm helping get these kids to a certain level of skiing where they can stand on the mountain and like be able to ski anything, also know just like the consequences and risks and environment that they're in out there and learn how to do it safely so that they can go out and recreate and enjoy the backcountry. Most of them, after they graduate high school, won't continue with their ski racing careers, but hopefully they'll continue to enjoy skiing. And the backcountry is a way that they can do that, but make sure, especially with teenagers whose brains might not be fully developed, and especially that whole decision making process is really important to have those skills and knowledge in the backcountry.
Then for you to feel comfortable like guiding in the backcountry, like what are the additional steps that you had taken?
Um, yeah, so when I was up in Alaska, I had a lot of really great mentors up there that would take me backcountry skiing. It was a really small community. And I was really lucky to go out with a lot of people that knew the area really well, had been doing it for a long time, and they were kind and generous enough to teach and share that information with me. And then when I came back to Tahoe, I did feel like I didn't really have a ton of experience there. Like I had skied a lot of classic lines because they were easy for me to access. I had the skiing and the teaching skills from coaching ski racing and teaching skiing. But I didn't necessarily have all the like mountain experience. Um, like I said, growing up in Pennsylvania, the Poconos aren't really the type of mountains that you are exploring and adventuring in out here. So I wanted to get more experience and education in that. And that's when I turned to like AIARE and the AMGA and started taking certification courses to increase my knowledge and education and get those certifications. Some of the AIARE and backcountry ski guiding businesses in Tahoe are AMGA certified and require that certification to be a ski guide, but not all of them are. So some of them just have their own in-house training or standards within the company. So I seeked out that training and knowledge, took those courses, and I shadowed a lot of courses and guides until I could do it on my own.
Okay. um, yeah, so I'm not very familiar with the ski discipline, but I've seen, I know the AMGA, I know there's a branch called the ski guiding, right? And then it seems like a lot of people I know, they are also, avalanche courses instructors, and then they are also this organization called PSIA. Is that right? Like ski instructor and all that. So I'm actually really don't know like what do people get. Like obviously rock climbing we also like um in addition to certification that I have to climb a lot, right? So that's when you say that you have to ski a lot, doing a lot of things, and we also have mentorship and all that. And but then I'm just kind of wondering that outside the experience, what are the like common like certification that people get?
Yeah, it's really similar to the rock guide track, the ski guide one. You have the prerequisites like the avalanche education and the AIARE courses. AIARE is not the only avalanche education provider in the United States, but it's probably the one that most people are familiar with. They kind of have a Kleenex brand to tissue analogy. But A3, the American Avalanche Association, is actually the governing body in the US. So AIARE is one of the schools that can provide avalanche education courses, but there are a few others. In the area, the geographic area where I live, I would say AIARE is the most dominant one. So people use that term. But A3 is the governing body. So there's a recreational track and a pro track. So back when I first moved to Tahoe, I took my first AIARE level 1 course, which is the recreational kind of ticket to learn to begin adventuring in the backcountry, being part of a group, and participating. And then when I came back to Tahoe, after spending a lot of time in the backcountry up in Alaska, they had split into a recreational and a pro track. So the recreational courses are for people that just want to get out in the backcountry and be able to do it on their own. Maybe similar to somebody who takes like an intro to rock climbing course with you and then wants to be able to go with their friends. And then the AIARE Rec 2 course is for people that want to be a leader. So we recommend like a year of backcountry travel experience in between your AIARE 1 and 2 and a bunch of days going out there. And then the AIARE 2 course, you learn how to kind of like lead your group in the backcountry. So making the trip plan, building in those decision points, lots of factors that go into being able to like take your friends out in the backcountry. And then the pro track splits from there and goes into people that are like guides, ski patrol, forecasters, and is a professional like for people working in the industry. So that was the first course that I took to get into guiding was my AIARE Pro 1.
I see. So you say that because some of the company you work for doesn't require you like as an AMGA ski guy or on that track. So who, what made you decide to like take the AMGA ski guy course?
Yeah, it's kind of unique in this area. I would say something that differs from rock guiding, but is more similar. Like in the state of California, in the summer I work as a whitewater raft guide. And there's no governing body over what certifications are required to be a raft guide, where it's up to the company. So the ski guiding is kind of like that. You have to have some basic like first aid certifications, obviously a level of skiing and experience in the mountains. But if you don't work for an AMGA accredited business, which actually most of them in Tahoe are not accredited, you don't have to have the AMGA accreditation. However, I did work for an AMGA accredited business. So my first year working for that company, I couldn't be a backcountry ski guide. I could only be an area instructor because that's what I had the certification for. So the AMGA has a scope of practice similar to the rock guiding. When you have different levels of certification, you can guide different terrain. That's exactly how it is in skiing too. So obviously getting into guiding, all these courses are really timely and expensive. You have to do a ton of prerequisites. You have to take a lot of time off of work to train and prepare for them. And then especially after COVID, it was really hard just to get into the courses because there was so much backlog and cancellations. And they only have a few courses every year. They're obviously during the season when you're working, so you have to be able to save enough money to take the time off of work to be able to get into the courses. You have to apply months ahead of time, putting together like your resume and everything. So you really have to do some planning years in advance. If I wanted to do the next level course this season, I would have already had to have like my application, my prerequisites done the season before. Because it's not like I could just come down to Red Rock where it's nice and warm all year round and go rock climbing. Like the ski resorts, we can only do the prerequisites when we can ski. So it takes a lot of planning in advance. So I started with the AIARE courses and became an AIARE instructor. And I did that as well as I did ski guide for another company that didn't require the AMGA certification. And in the beginning, it's definitely just starting out with mostly like entry level courses, like taking people backcountry skiing for the first time. So it's super basic, teaching people like how to use their gear, how to wear it, what to pack, like how to know even where to look for, where to go. And and then kind of how to start to plan that day, but definitely not going like too deep into the backcountry or skiing really big mountains. And I also started teaching those avalanche education courses. And that's kind of like the bread and butter of the work in the industry, like getting the most people into the sport. It's what like most people look for as like a minimum to start like going out into the backcountry. Well, like have you taken an avalanche education course just so the people that are out there are like aware of what's going on around them and prepared. And I taught lots of those courses my first year. And then the AMGA within their scope of practice was trying to restructure, and they came up with the idea that everybody that teaches AIARE courses needs to be a ski guide.
You
So
mean
that's
the ski guy and like final ski guy or the
a ski guide
okay
for the first step.
the apprentice ski guy at least? Okay.
Yeah, so that's when I started being like, oh no, I have to really look into this AMGA stuff and start taking it more seriously. Initially, when I started getting into the ski guiding, the AIARE courses, there was just more in my area and they were easier to get into. Um, and the AMGA was more expensive, more time commitment, more intimidating. But I really wanted to be able to keep doing it. So I contacted them and I was able, unlike the Alpine course and the rock guide track, the ski guide course actually has a bunch of prerequisites before you can even get into that course. Um, so like I said, I had to do my AIARE Pro 1 certification, and then you could either take an Alpine skills course or the rock guide course, but that's a prerequisite for your ski guide course. So I wanted to do the ski guide course the following season, which meant I didn't meet the prerequisites for the rock guide course. I don't have the experience rock climbing, but I had to get into the Alpine skills course that season. So I worked with the AMGA, and they were really helpful at the office because I worked for an accredited business. And they were putting this restriction or regulation on area instruction, which they actually didn't end up going through with. But I'm so glad that I went through the process and want to continue going through it. But I was able to get into an Alpine skills course that spring, which then allowed me to take my ski guide course the following season. But yeah, I guess that's how I got into the AMGA, was kind of because they made
Okay, so because originally you were worried that you can teach the AIARE course because you didn't have the credential, but right now, yeah, I don't know that part of it. So if right now you don't have the say apprentice ski guide, can you still teach that AIARE course, or what happened afterwards?
10. Yeah, they just
Okay,
to take that out of the scope of practice. I think it wasn't realistic to encompass the entire country under that umbrella. Um,
I
and then
see.
every has like their own regulations as well as like the American Avalanche Association or A3 under like their scope of practice. And like as a course instructor, you have to work for a course leader and that kind of stuff.
And you mentioned that you were happy that even though right now it's like not really required, but you didn't regret that you took that route. I mean, obviously you have to um, pay and do the Alpine skill course and then do the ski guide course. Uh, and I remember when we talk about you doing the SPI right after the SPI course, and then also our email conversation that you mentioned that you feel that your AMGA experience is quite different than a lot of other women.
Yeah, one of the additional reasons that I was kind of like hesitant to get into the AMGA was because it's a pretty intimidating organization. I look at it as a very elite group of guides in the country. Like I said, I've done a lot of other guiding, like hiking, camping, backpacking, rafting, kayaking. Um, but the AMGA was always this like kind of organization that was up on a pedestal, and it seemed very unattainable to me before I.
Yeah. Interesting. I wonder how AMGA got that. The why do like people think that AMGA is intimidating? I
Um,
want. Mm-hmm.
well, for example, like in instruction and coaching, I do, like you mentioned, PSIA. So I've done all my PSIA certifications. And each level is maybe a few $100s. And people kind of like complain that that's expensive. And then you look at the AMGA where each level certification's a few $1,000s.
You're just like, wow, that's like a private school.
So yeah, I think like the cost was definitely a factor. Um, and I also like that whole intimidation of these people are just like really elite, experienced, and so unattainable from like my background growing up in Pennsylvania in these small little mountains where I didn't even know what like backcountry skiing was or that the AMGA existed and it could be a profession. Um, Kind of like it's like, well, you have to be doing that like your whole life and grow up in the mountains to be able to have those skills. Like I still look at some of my bosses and my mentors at work and I'm like, how am I ever going to get there? They like know so much and do so much. But I think it all starts with just like taking the first step and continuing on the path. Um, so yeah, that was like kind of just making the commitment to get into it. I kind of looked at, I used to try to save money to travel during the off season. And when COVID shut the world down, I was like, well, I can't really travel internationally or go anywhere. I'll just look at this as like my vacation for the next few years because I get to go to cool places. I did my Alpine skills course up in Washington. I got to do my ski guide course in Canada, and then I did my SPI course down in Red Rock, and that was the first time I had ever been to all those places. So even though I don't get to go on vacation right now because I'm saving all my money for my certification courses, I look at the AMGA courses as kind of like a really cool, unique trip where I get to do really fun things and meet new people and just that like network that I've created through those courses. Like every time I've gone, I have contacts that I've met. And the people in the courses have been so like supportive and open and are kind of a similar mindset of like, yeah, we're doing this. It's like a big commitment, but we're out here like working hard, training, doing all of our prerequisites. And you just like meet this network of people that are all over the country and the world. And after every course, it's always like, if you're ever in this area, like look me up if you want to come train, if you want to do this trip, if you need info or beta on this area, like you have this network of people from the courses. So that's really cool too.
So it's like your real experience was not intimidating.
Yeah, it was the complete opposite. And that was something that really surprised me. But it's been very like encouraging and motivating to continue down the process. Like I said, when I first started doing it, I really only did it because I had to, or I thought I had to. But every course that I've taken has making me want to like work harder and train more and take the next step and continue down the pathway because I've just learned so much and had such great experiences through the process.
And then you say that yeah, so maybe you start with okay, I'm this vacation mindset. And then maybe you would also make it a little bit intimidating. I was like, oh, I'm having a vacation. So now you are ready to save some more money for more vacation. And
Yeah.
what's your outlook? You think that you would eventually want to be a ski guide?
Yeah, this year I signed up for my A3 Pro 2 course. So that's kind of the next step. It's a prerequisite to become an AIARE course leader, as well as an AMGA ski guide. So that is a week-long course. I'm really excited because I get to go back to Alaska to
Oh,
take it.
nice.
They don't offer that one around here, so I had to travel for it. So I picked Alaska. The timing just worked out too. Um, and I'll go up there and take that course. I've already started studying for it. It's a big one, so that's what I'm spending my like off season doing right now while we're waiting for snow is just prepping for that course. And then I'm also doing a big PSIA course this year as well. So saving money and training for that one in the spring. And also kind of just trying to take it like one step at a time. There's definitely like a 5-year plan to achieve all my courses, but each level of certification takes so much work. I think it's really important to be focused and present in that process and not worry too much about the final outcome, because there's so much to learn along the whole journey and through the process that every day that I'm just like studying or I'm trying to do a prerequisite, there's like a lot of mock guiding or building snow profiles and that kind of stuff. Just being really focused and learning as much as I can for that. And then I think if and when I do get to the top level in the future, I'll be more prepared for it when I get there because I really took in and absorbed all the information and the education and experiences along the way.
And so your main discipline is ski.
Yeah.
How long is your season? I mean, can you travel and then make it all year round? Is that possible? Or what's your and then answer that question and then what's your current season for your location and all that?
It depends on the weather. It's
Okay.
the year. Growing up in Pennsylvania, ski season was only like 3 months long, maybe from like December, January to March. So that was part of the reason that I wanted to move out west was because the ski season was so much longer. Um, in California and Tahoe, especially because of the high elevation that we have here, the snow can stick around in the mountains for a really long time. Some of the ski resorts this past season was a record year, and they were open on the 4th of July down on the east side. Mammoth didn't open until August. I wasn't still working then, but it was pretty cool that the ski season could go that long. And sometimes it starts as early as October. Right now, we're waiting for some snow. It's getting cold. The resorts are starting to make snow. It's kind of raining and hailing at my house right now, and hopefully snowing up on the mountains. The first ski resorts are slated to open this Friday, and then the ones that I work at are supposed to open around Thanksgiving. So usually if we have snow, the season starts around Thanksgiving or early December and stays pretty busy through the end of April. Um, Usually have a really good snowpack and good weather in the spring for longer days out there. So it's pretty busy through the end of April. And then when it starts to get warm, it slows down. Sometimes you can ski in May and June, but not always.
Right,
Um,
so it's like at your location, it's like average, probably like roughly half year-ish,
Yeah, 5 to 6 months, I
five
would
to
say.
six months. And then what do most people do? Like, so do they do something else in the summertime in the same location, or they travel, say, to South America? I don't know. I don't know. Yeah.
Both. When I first moved out here, I did the back-to-back winters. I traveled to the Southern Hemisphere on a working holiday visa, and then I spent one summer working in New Zealand, and one summer working in Australia. And then I guess I just got a little bit older and tired of being on the road so much and traveling. So I decided that I like summer too, and to stay in Tahoe in the summers and get into that summer guiding around here. So I would say that's what most people do is guide a different discipline in the summer. Like rock is definitely really popular here. I do mostly whitewater, which, like I said, isn't an AMGA discipline, but is similar as
Like
well.
whitewater rafting or kayaking ish? Yeah,
Oh,
or both. Okay. Um, and yeah, because I remember you mentioned that you want to take the SPI course so that you can do some via Verada
yeah.
in Tahoe. Yeah, I'm actually curious because I got a lot of people ask me about whether there are like via Verada in United States because it's pretty popular in Europe. So, so what's the situation via Ferrara in Tahoe area?
Yeah, so one of the main companies that I work for is called Alpenglow Expeditions. And they're actually an international company. They're kind of famous for creating a program that allows you to summit big mountains in a short period of time. So they do that all over the world. And then I work for their local program, which is based in Tahoe, at Palisades, Tahoe, which is in Olympic Valley. And that's where we do a lot of AIARE courses and ski guiding out of in the winter. They have a really unique program through Palisades, Tahoe, where you can use the lifts to access the backcountry. So they do ski guiding and Nat Geo Bowl, which is kind of exclusive to their company. And then in the summer, they again do rock guiding all over the state, but their specialty is the Via Ferrata, which they built at Palisades, Tahoe. So it's pretty unique, I would say, for the United States. I've worked with some people from Europe where they're like, yeah, we have these in our like backyard and you can just go do it. And that's kind of like what they grow up doing. Like kids play in the woods here. But the only two that I know of in this area are there's one at Palisades and one at Mammoth. So the ski resorts have kind of capitalized on that like summer business. Right? How can we make it a year-round resort? Um, and
Interesting, yeah, because I heard some ski resort do like mountain biking.
yeah, so similar.
I
Yeah,
see. Yeah, so they just kind of now the ski resort, the area you work with for they have Via Ferrata for
yeah.
okay, and then you can take the lifts to somewhere.
Um, the Via Ferrata, I've never done the one at Mammoth, but I know the one at Palisades. We drive in kind of like a 4x4 vehicle up to the base of it, and then you climb all the way to the top of the mountain, or there's a lot of different routes, so it's friendly for like anybody to do. And then you either hike off or you take the 4x4 back down. You don't actually use any of the lifts.
Okay. Oh, wow. So so your summer work is like rafting or potentially Via Ferrata, and then you do a lot of ski work.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
have a lot of jobs.
Yeah, no, I mean it's very like for a lot of guys, it's like this is very normal, right? A lot of guys have like W-2 from so many like so many W-2s from like different companies. Depends on like the time of the year because the outdoor industry we have seasons.
Yeah.
So yeah, and oh yeah, and then we were talking about that. You mentioned that you listened to some of the episodes the female guys requested, and you like the one that was Mia, which I think is what episode 6. Yeah, I'm trying to also like hey episode 6. Um, like why do you like that the best? Like, well, why do you resonate that the most?
Yeah, definitely connected with Mia because of her interests and background in skiing. And that's kind of how she started as a guide as well, so could relate to that. And then just hearing her story of what she went through as a female in the AMGA, and listening and hearing about all her experiences and accomplishments. And like, to me, she definitely stood out as like a badass, not just for a female, but for any guide in the world. So I think that her story was really cool, but also really relatable to how she talked about being intimidated by the AMGA at first as well. Because I think that's a lot, something that a lot of females feel when they want to get into guiding or start to think about it as a career, even just like participating in these more extreme outdoor activities or sports. Is that for a long time it's definitely been a boys' club. And when you look at the industry, females are still a minority.
So
So
also in the ski discipline too?
yeah, yeah, I think it's kind of all outdoor sport
Okay.
fighting. Um, but just hearing her story about how she like overcame that and went through that, and I just definitely like look up to her, not just as a female, but she's like one of the top guides in the country for anybody. I think that's really cool and definitely like part of that, like if you can see her, you can be her type mentality, like seeing people like that makes me want to keep working towards that as well.
Yeah, I think she also mentioned that I don't know whether in the podcast I read it in her profile that she did rafting guy too when like before, right? And then right now it's mostly in the mountain, I think. Yeah, but definitely she is good at all discipline.
Yeah, even though, like we said before, rafting is not an AMGA track, it's definitely similar in a lot of ways in the sport, with the majority being male dominated. Um, so yeah, definitely cool to share stories and hear about other female raft guides as well.
And what's your personal experience? So, like, I know that you mentioned that for the courses you feel mostly positive, and then you actually mentioned that your courses you have half 50% male and female ratio.
Yeah, I think it's been a really cool and positive experience with the AMGA, and that's kind of what I shared with you and wanted to share with other people through your podcast as well, because a few years ago when I wanted to or was interested in getting involved with the AMGA and becoming a ski guide, I was intimidated because I wasn't like a young 20 something athletic white male that had grown up in the mountains and done a lot of this their whole life. On the contrast, I was like a 30 something year old female from Pennsylvania, like small mountains that had never even heard of this stuff growing up. Didn't have a lot of experience or even like confidence in the mountains. So the AMGA was just really intimidating to me at first, and something that like I never thought that I could do. Also having a lot of experience in both in ski coaching and instruction. Like I had gone through all my certifications, like have my highest level PSIA certifications, US ski and snowboard, actually like do certification clinics for those organizations now. As I went through those steps in my 20s as a young female, often being a minority, it wasn't always a positive experience, whether it was like sexist comments or just feeling like I wasn't part of the club or whatever the experience was, like it wasn't always positive and it was really difficult and challenging to go through at times. And with the AMGA, I was like, do I really want to go through this again and start all over? And at first I didn't. Especially with some experiences that I had in the beginning, like even though I was now in my 30s and a little bit more confident and sure of myself and who I was still like a minority as a female at the trailhead in my backcountry groups, in courses that I had taken. Like I was the one girl out of the six participants, or still one of the younger ones. And it wasn't always fun, like not being around your peers, like whether it's skiing or climbing to go with a group of like awesome girls is always amazing out in the mountains. And I've done a lot of like women's only things, and that's not necessarily like what I'm looking for. Like I like being with mixed groups, just not being the minority all the time. So it's definitely a barrier to the AMGA. Like I looked at it like it was going to be just like all those other experiences. But then, like I said, I got into it kind of because I had to if I wanted to keep doing my AIARE courses, and I did. And the experiences that I had in all my AMGA courses was completely the opposite. It was really unique and different than, like I said, I'm a member of like PSIA, US Ski and Snowboard, um, AIARE, ACA, and AMGA. I've only taken 3 courses so far, but there were definitely some big courses in there. And when I had you as an instructor, I was kind of reflecting and looking back that 50% of my course instructors and 50% of the participants that I had taken um, in my courses were female. That I was never a minority or felt that way in any of the AMGA courses. And I just thought that was a really cool, unique experience. I know I've only taken courses in the past few years where they've tried really hard to increase their outreach to minorities. And everybody's experience probably isn't like that with the ratio that I've had. I just thought it was really cool and can definitely tell that the AMGA is doing a lot to like uphold this standard and be very professional about it. Um, and wanted to share that with everybody that's like interested or maybe feeling the same way that I felt or that Mia felt, or I'm sure that thousands and countless of other females have felt about the AMGA or getting into guiding, that it's going to be just this good old boys club or intimidating experience, because what I actually experienced was very different than my expectations or preconceptions about it. Um,
Yeah, thank you, Ellie, for sharing this. And I think you should give yourself more credit. Yeah, I mean, you've been through this, as a very young 20-something-year-old woman, and then now, at 30-something, you already have a lot of experience before you took the AMGA courses. So, I mean, you are good.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, um, but it also shows that just because that we women always probably still in the outdoor industry are the minority, so we kind of have that barrier. Yeah. But I think that a lot of women I've talked to on this show, and then the women that I haven't talked, and I want to invite them on the show, they are really good.
Yeah, I think that's something really common with women is that they look at their experience as like maybe less than our male counterparts, like a guy will go out and do something once and they're like an expert at it, whereas females, we tend to want to do something like 100 times and still don't feel fully capable in it. which is why it's really important to be surrounded by other females and have other women out there in the field, whether it's on like the rock wall or the skin track, um, to have other females out there supporting each other. And again, going back to those AMGA courses that I've taken, I've felt that support not only from the females, but from all the males and everybody in the course, that it didn't matter like your gender, um, or experience level. Like everyone in the course comes from such different backgrounds and has such a wide variety of experiences and skills that they bring to the table, that I've just like learned so much from everybody. And everyone's always been able to create such like an open and supportive learning environment.
Great. Yeah. Oh, I want to talk about your website a little bit. I know you made the website, and then I saw like a GoFundMe page too. So it means that you have some big dreams. Do you want to talk a little bit about it?
Um, yeah, I guess I kind of feel like I'm going back to college right now, earning my degree in mountain guiding, because AIARE and AMGA and PSIA and US Ski and Snowboard, are all these different certifications, and continuing education that I not only have to do, but I want to do, because I'm trying to get better at what I do and want to be current with standards, and constantly just improve so that I can share that with like my guests or the people that I'm teaching. But it's really expensive, and it's getting really hard to live in a mountain town. All these really cool areas that we recreate have gotten way
Expensive?
more the past few years, so that makes it difficult to continue doing guiding as a profession. I know we were talking earlier about how we have like 10 different W-2s a year. That's real when I file my taxes. Um, and yeah, I work really hard to try to work as many jobs as I can, but these courses continue to get more and more expensive as you go through them, and require a lot of it is like unpaid time off work to do the training and shadowing and then taking time off for the courses. It's definitely really hard, but I want to keep doing it. So I'm just trying to figure out every single way that I can to continue to do.
Yeah, yeah. I'll definitely put your website on the show note and see that whether some like we can gather some help for you along your way. Yeah, and yeah. So and then a few questions I like to ask all my guests. So how long have you been doing? Um, how long have you been in working in the outdoor?
Yeah, so I started in college. When I grew up skiing, I went with my school as a kid and then was on like the local ski team. And in college, I was on the ski team, but skiing, as many people know, is a really expensive sport. So the way that I was introduced and able to do it was my mom was a teacher, and then she became a ski instructor. So she got a discount on like my team fees and my pass and everything like that. So when I went to college, I got a job at the resort to continue to do that, because I wanted to ski a lot, and skiing a lot would be really expensive. So I got to do it through work. So I worked at ski resorts all through college to be able to ski. And then I actually graduated with a degree in finance and went to work in corporate finance right out of college, because that's what society said you were supposed to do. But I kept working at the ski resorts like part time at nights and on weekends, because it was what I really loved to do. And then I feel really lucky after just a couple short years in corporate finance to realize that I wanted to make skiing my full-time career. And I had some friends that were doing it after college. They had moved out west and were working in the ski industry full time. And I went to visit them and realized I liked their life way better than mine. So I moved out west in 2010 to pursue a full-time career in the ski industry. And like I said, I started doing the back-to-back season, like year-round ski teaching and coaching. Um, and then after that, I realized that I like summer too, and be gone so much. So I started looking into like just different things that I could do guiding in the summer to complement that work in the ski industry in the winter. So I started out like just doing hiking and backpacking and camping, um, where I still traveled all over the country. And then I got really into whitewater. So started raft guiding in 2016. And then just started teaching kayaking this year. But really didn't start getting into ski guiding until it was like the winter of 2021.
Nice. Yeah, I have to confess, you're doing the hard stuff because I remember that I learned how to ski, and then I mean, skiing is not very hard to learn, but it's very hard to get good, in my opinion. Uh, and then to a point, I just like, wow, if I really want to push it, I'm like really afraid. And then I also uh, I learned whitewater kayaking too, but to the point, it's just like, wow, it's like really scary. Once I experienced the class 3+ water, I was like, wow, I'm like really scared. So I decided I wanted to rock climb because rock climb is slow. And then so I probably have more time if something happened to think about how I'm gonna get myself out of the situation. So I have to tell you that I have a lot of admiration to you. You're pretty brave. Those sports are hard.
Thank you. I think rock climbing is the same way that you look at skiing. Skiing definitely was easier for me to learn because I started at such a young age. Um, but like rock climbing and whitewater were sports that I didn't grow up doing. Really, I never even knew what they or were sports when I was a kid. But once I moved out west to work in the ski industry, definitely like met a lot of people and got introduced to these other sports. So I had to go through learning both like whitewater and rock climbing as an adult. And it's very different. They are both very scary and kind of still are for me. It's one of the really cool and kind of addicting things about learning them is facing that fear every day and overcoming it.
Definitely. That's a cool thing about learning new things for sure. Yeah. And so looking back about your outdoor guiding career, if you just like things pop out of your head, what's your proudest memory?
I think like going back to that whole learning whitewater and rock climbing for me as an adult and being really scared or afraid of things in the beginning and having to overcome those fears. I like to take that into my guiding. Um, and I have this one client that I started doing lessons and teaching her in the resort, and then she wanted to go out and learn backcountry. So she was my first client ski guiding. Um, and honest, it was my first time guiding too. And the first day out was kind of a disaster. Like what I took her to do was way too hard. She was in all brand new backcountry gear that she had never used before. And we ended up like walking down part of the mountain after I like rubbed her feet and warmed them up for a little while because she had all these gear malfunctions. But that season we worked really hard and kind of just like dialed it back and started with like we went back to the resort and she practiced using her backcountry setup in the resort and like skiing with a backpack for the first time And we did this whole progression throughout the whole season and did a bunch of smaller tours. And then at the end of the season, we went back up to that tour we attempted the first time out, and she did it and didn't have like any issues or any problem. But was able to go back and do that. And that was really cool. And I think it's just all the times where you're like introducing somebody to the sport that they thought was really intimidating for the very first time and like showing them that they can do it. Because even though like when I'm guiding people in the backcountry, just like when you're guiding climbing, like at the end of the day, like they're making the moves, they're holding themselves in the rock, like in skiing, like they're the ones that are hiking up that mountain and skiing down. And a lot of times, like people don't think they can do it or have never done it before and are afraid to try. Or like we said, like for me with whitewater and climbing and you with skiing, like it's really hard and like we don't think we can do it or we're very good at it, but just introducing people and giving them the tools to be able to do it and have those experiences, whether it's like their first time or just doing something they didn't think they could do, is really cool.
Then I'm curious now that so you say you start skiing at very young age, and then so you when you learn whitewater and climbing when you were an adult, so you were a little bit more afraid. Then do you still get afraid skiing? No? Like any moment that you might just think, I'm like scared too, or you just know well that how to deal.
I definitely feel very comfortable with my skis on my feet underneath me. Um, it's probably been, yeah, like 30 years of doing it, 100 days a year. So I hope I'm pretty good at it.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt that you're pretty good at it because I'm just wondering because I also learned rock climbing as an adult, so as some I mean I'm comfortable on a lot of things, but can still get afraid. So I'm just kind of wondering for people say they just born into climbing or born into a sport, do they just have a different perspective? That's just like a curiosity, like out of my curiosity, I want to ask this question.
Yeah, I feel like I do have a different perspective. Like learning things as a kid is scientifically proven to be easier when our we have a lot less experiences that we have to like reteach or remap in our brains. And that goes back to like part of my intimidation with like AMGA or being a mountain guide. Like I wasn't born in the water or in the mountains. Where every time I go whitewater kayaking, like I'm still nervous or rock climbing, like I definitely have fears and discomfort with like exposure and heights. So even though I like to climb, like that stuff still scares me and makes me uncomfortable. Where in the skiing world, I'm definitely comfortable with like that icy crust stuff that we grew up skiing in the Poconos, as well as I think like being out there in tough conditions. Um, I look back at like my youth and childhood growing up and be like, man, I must have really like skiing under like the man-made snow and all that kind of stuff. Definitely prepared me for any conditions that I might face out here. But I definitely do still get scared of the mountains, especially like going into the backcountry, like a ski resort is that controlled environment, like you compare it to the climbing gym, right? Where when you go into the backcountry, there's a lot of uncertainty. So you have to rely on like your decision making. And I don't know if ever my that will get as good as my ski skills.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. But I think it's kind of cool that because you learn new other sports as an adult, so you can use that experience, uh, to relate to your client because they learn ski when they are adult. But for you, probably if you say, skiing is so easy.
It's like I still work on my skiing and my technique and my skills every time that I'm out there. Um, but yeah, I think that learning new sports as an adult, especially like the whitewater and the rock climbing, has helped me relate to my clients and be able to put myself in their shoes and understand what they're going through because I've gone through it, and then help like to connect with them and hopefully make my teaching or what I'm presenting to them more accessible and understandable.
Great. Yeah. All right. One more big question for you. So for people who listen to this podcast, if they have to only take one thing away, what do you wish them take away?
I think that like if you're interested in becoming a guide or starting a career in the industry, or even just like trying a sport like climbing or skiing for the first time, just like a lot of encouragement to take the first step and remove any like biases or preconceived notations you have about that sport is so extreme or so hard, or you have to be really athletic or have all these skills to be able to take that like first step and try it. Or especially for females, that you have to be this like young 20 something white guy that grew up doing all this stuff. Um, but that these sports are really enjoyable and accessible for everybody, and that all it takes to like be able to go out there and do it is that first step. So I just want to encourage anybody that's interested or thinking about it, to seek out resources like the AMGA, hiring a guide, taking a course, and getting like the education that enables you to be able to go out there and enjoy sports too.
Nice. So, do you have like any public profile if people want to reach out to you? So, what's the best way for them? Say, if they say, "Hey, Ellie, I really want to learn how to backcountry ski," and uh, then if they really like listen to this podcast and want to hire you, do they find you?
Yeah, I work for a few different companies in Tahoe right now. So you can find me on any of their websites or reach out to me personally, and I can share my contact info with you.
Cool. So, uh, great. Yeah. So maybe who knows? Like now, I mean, in the future, maybe I'll go out and then say, hey, can you take me out on this line? I haven't skied for a long time, so don't laugh at me if I'm like really clumsy.
Yeah, no, I'll take you skiing and you can take me climbing.
Okay. Yeah. That would be a deal. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on the show. Yeah. So, anything else? Any last word you want to like plug out there?
Thanks for having me. It was awesome to see you again and talk to you, and hopefully, like all the other networks through the AMGA, we can stay in touch and really get out there and ski and climb together again.